Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from RAU'S Study Circle.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 11th January 2021. And the articles that we will discuss today are displayed on your screen. And before starting this discussion, you should take up this self-assessment test, and the answers for the self-assessment test will be given at the end of this video. So let us start with the first article. Now this article on page number 13 is related to the restoration of ties between Saudi Arabia and 4 other Arabic countries with Qatar. And a feud had started back in 2017 between the 4 Arabic countries and the Qatar, and accordingly it led to transportation blockade against Qatar by Saudi Arabia. Now some of these feuding countries are the members of the Gulf Cooperation Council, and also they are one of the important exporters of oil and gas in the West Asian region. So in this background, in this article, we will look at what was the issue and what is the importance of this rapprochement and reconciliation between these feuding countries. Finally, we will look at what are the stakes for India in this region and what is the importance of Qatar for the West Asian region. And some of the points that we discuss here can be very important for us from General Studies Paper 2 point of view in the mains examination under the topic International Relations. So first let us look at the brief overview of this issue. Now this crisis that happened in the West Asian region is popularly known as the Middle East crisis. And this crisis was between Saudi-led coalition of 4 Arab countries, which included the United Arab Emirates or the UAE, Bahrain and Egypt, and Qatar. And accordingly, recently this Saudi-led coalition had announced the restoration of ties with Qatar. Now when did this crisis start? So back in 2017, Saudi Arabia led an air transport blockade against Qatar. And this was done mainly in order to punish the Qatar for its ties with radical Islamist groups that were operating in the region. However, the larger motive of Saudi Arabia in putting these blockades and sidelining Qatar was that it wanted Qatar to downgrade its ties with Iran, which is also one of the major players in the West Asian region and is the biggest rival of Saudi Arabia. So accordingly, this coalition had put 13 demands as condition to resume the relations with Qatar. And some of these demands included shutting down of the news organization Al Jazeera, closing a Turkish military base in the Qatar, and also downgrading of ties between Qatar and Tehran. Now some of these countries are also the members of Gulf Cooperation Council. So accordingly, let us first look at the composition of the Gulf Cooperation Council and which all countries are the members of this GCC. Now this Gulf Cooperation Council was established by an agreement which was concluded back in 1981 in Saudi Arabia, and it included countries like Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar and UAE. So as you can see that these are the countries that surround Persian Gulf, and accordingly this Cooperation Council is known as the Gulf Cooperation Council. So you can see the location of these countries, and they include the Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, etc. Now these countries have formed this coalition because they share geographical proximity, they have similar political systems which are based on Islamic beliefs, and they are based on joint destiny and common objectives, and they are also the biggest or some of the largest producers of oil and gas in the West Asian region and the world. So as some of these feuding countries are also the members of the Gulf Cooperation Council, which is the biggest producer of oil and gas, this issue or this fight between these countries had assumed global importance because most of the countries of the world import their oil and gas from this particular region. So in this regard, let us first look at what is the importance of Qatar and some important facts related to Qatar. So first, you should be aware of the location of Qatar on the map of West Asia or the Middle Eastern region. And you will find that it only shares borders with Saudi Arabia and is mainly located in the Persian Gulf. Also, besides this, you need to be aware of the location of all the countries that are surrounding the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman from your preliminary examination point of view. And you can see that countries like Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iran and Iraq share their borders with Persian Gulf. Now, Qatar has gone from being one of the poorest Gulf countries to one of the wealthiest countries in the West Asian region. And this has largely been because of the presence of large gas reserves that were found in the country, and this has contributed significantly to its increasing clout in the region, and it has become an influential player in the region's politics. Now, the issue here is that Qatar shares a huge gas field with Iran, which is known as South Pars or the North Dome gas condensate field. And that is why it has had good relations with the Iran. However, the issue here is that Iran is mainly populated by the Shia Islamic population. However, the Saudi Arabia and the coalition countries of Saudi Arabia are mainly Sunni Islamic countries. And accordingly, both these groups that are led by Saudi Arabia and Iran have been fighting with each other for dominance in the regional politics in West Asia. And this has been termed as a Cold War that is going on between West Asia, between countries that are led by Saudi Arabia and the countries that are led by Iran. And we note that Qatar is a member of the Gulf Cooperation Council, and accordingly, its improving relations with Iran were a cause of concern for Saudi Arabia. And accordingly, in 2017, the coalition that was led by Saudi Arabia had put an air blockade against Qatar. And this was seen as a step taken by the Saudi Arabia in order to influence the geopolitics of the region and to sideline Qatar because of its improving relations with Iran. Now, we note that there are various other issues that are also ongoing in the West Asian region or the Middle Eastern region. And one of the famous conflict is the Israel-Palestine conflict. Further, we note that Arab countries had always supported Palestine against Israel. However, recently, a reconciliation process has also started between Israel and some of these Arab countries, which include UAE, Bahrain, etc. And that is also being seen as one of the key events in the geopolitics of the West Asia. So accordingly, Saudi Arabia and countries like Israel and Qatar are improving their relations in order to sideline Iran in the West Asian region. So in this regard, let us look at how did the breakthrough happen in this feud between the member countries of the West Asia. Now we note that US is one of the biggest allies of Saudi Arabia, and this relationship between US and Saudi Arabia has been strengthened under the Donald Trump regime. And initially, US under Donald Trump had called the Qatar as a funder of terror. However, due to the mediation of another member of the GCC, that is Kuwait, US made a U-turn in its policy towards Qatar. And it was due to this mediation by Kuwait and US finally the crisis between the feuding countries, that is the Saudi Arabia-led coalition and Qatar, has come to an end. So after this, let us look at the position of India with regards to its relations with the Qatar. Now initially, India had called this crisis or the Middle Eastern crisis as an internal matter of the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. However, after this issue has been resolved, India has welcomed this reconciliation and reapproachment from countries in the region. So this highlights that India has been avoiding any involvement in the issues or the local issues that are happening in the West Asian region, and it has been taking a balanced approach as far as the internal issues of the region are concerned. Further, recently India's External Affairs Minister has also visited Qatar. Now, West Asian countries and especially the GCC countries or the Gulf Cooperation Council countries are pivotal or important to India's energy security and diaspora welfare. And that is because this is the region from which India imports its supplies of crude oil, and this region is the largest exporter of crude oil to India. Further, the GCC countries are home to about 8 million Indian expatriates. That is, 8 million Indians are living in this West Asian region, and they are the ones who have been sending remittances back home and are the biggest contributor to the foreign exchange earnings of India. And majority of these Indian expatriates are based in Saudi Arabia and UAE. Accordingly, India has prioritized its relations with West Asian countries through its Look West policy. Now, as far as Qatar is concerned, it is the per capita richest country of the region and is also the largest supplier of gas to India. So this is one of the important reasons why India has been taking or working on improving its relations with Qatar. Further, 7 lakh Indians live and work in Qatar, and many of them send back big amounts of remittances back into India, and they are one of the important sources of foreign exchange earnings for India. Also, we note that these foreign exchange earnings are very important for India to control its balance of payment or balance of trade issues. Also, Qatar has lately been taking or has introduced labor reforms that have been adopted for the welfare of its workers. And as we note that many Indians are also working in Qatar, India has welcomed these labor reform measures. Further, Qatar is also the host to intra-Afghan talks and Taliban delegation with Afghanistan. And the resolution of the Afghan crisis is crucial for India's security. And accordingly, as Qatar is hosting the intra-Afghan talks, it is one of the important nations with which India has to improve its ties. So, in this regard, in this article, we have looked at the issue that happened between Saudi-led coalition and the Qatar, and also how this crisis came to an end, and finally, what are the stakes of India in this region and in Qatar. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 7 is basically an account of the initiative of the government of India for promoting electric mobility and also what India needs to do in order to ensure that this electric mobility takes reality into India and how India is working upon the development of lithium ion batteries, and for that, how India is going to fulfill this demand of lithium in India. And some of the points that we will discuss here are important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. Now, in this line, first we need to understand as to why is Government of India aiming at transition to the electric vehicles. So, in this regard, it has been highlighted that it is important for India because the electrical vehicles are sustainable and profitable in the long term. Further, these vehicles will reduce India's dependence on the crude oil imports. And you might be knowing that this is one of the major imports for India. That is, India's crude oil demand is mainly met by its imports, and that is why its foreign exchange reserves are badly impacted because of such imports. So, in this regard, it might save the government some amount of money, it can reduce the carbon emissions and also build domestic energy independence. That is, India's dependency on the crude oil imports from the West Asian region might reduce. Also, these vehicles are economically and environmentally viable. Now, as India wants to move away from the traditional vehicles towards the electrical vehicles, India will have to develop the lithium ion batteries, and for that, India has to import lithium from foreign countries. And the American countries or the Latin American countries are one of the biggest producers of lithium in the world. And accordingly, the article highlights that this will also influence India's foreign policy, as India's energy security dependence will shift from West Asia, which is the provider of crude oil, towards Latin America, which is the provider of lithium, which will help India in developing lithium ion batteries, which are crucial for development of electric vehicles in India. Now, as far as the crude oil imports are concerned, India imported about 228.6 million tons of crude oil, and it was worth about $120 billion in 2018 and 19. And this made India the third largest oil importer in the world in terms of the value of crude oil imports. Now, what has been the government's policy for the promotion of electric vehicles? So, in this regard, India had started the faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electrical vehicles, or the FAME scheme. And this has now been updated to FAME 2 scheme. Under this, the government has allocated $1.3 billion in terms of incentives for electric buses, three-wheelers, four-wheelers, etc. And these incentives will be available for commercial purposes till 2022. And India has also earmarked $135 million for charging stations, which are necessary infrastructure for the development of or the promotion of electric vehicles in India. Further, Niti Aayog has proposed a subsidy for the battery makers to the tune of $4.6 billion. And also, India has the vision to have 30% electrical vehicles plying on the Indian roads by 2030. So, this shows that India is focusing on promoting the electric vehicles in India. Now, one of the important things that is required for the promotion of these electric vehicles are the lithium ion batteries. So, in order to achieve its goal of electrical vehicles, development of lithium ion batteries is crucial for India. And to boost the local manufacturing of such batteries in India, India has to import lithium. And this is because India has very limited lithium deposits which are still to be explored. Now, at present, the lithium ion battery demand is fulfilled by imports from China, Vietnam, and Hong Kong. And in the last 2 years, India's import of the lithium has tripled from $384 million to $1.2 billion. So, this shows the growing demand for lithium in India for the development of lithium ion batteries, which are crucial for electric mobility. Now, Latin America has the richest resources of lithium in the world. And the lithium in Latin America is mainly found in what is known as the Lithium Triangle. And this Lithium Triangle is located in three countries, that is Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. So, this lithium triangle encompasses lithium deposits that are found under the salt flats of northwest Argentina, northern Chile, and southwest Bolivia, and this holds about 80% of the explored lithium of the world. So, this shows that Latin American countries and mainly Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia have the largest resources or deposits of the lithium in the world. So, these three countries, which are the part of the lithium triangle, can be a very important aspect for us from the preliminary examination point of view. So, in this regard, we also need to learn about India's efforts for the exploration of lithium in India as well as abroad. So, as far as the exploration of lithium abroad is concerned, in 2019, the India's National Aluminium Company or NALCO, the Hindustan Copper Limited HCL, and the Mineral Exploration Corporation Limited or the MECL had signed a joint venture agreement to form Khanij Bidesh India Limited or the KABIL. And this venture was started in order to look for strategic mineral assets like lithium and cobalt abroad or outside India, which can be exploited for commercial purposes and for supplying to meet the domestic requirement for the battery manufacturers. Now, apart from the explorations abroad, India has also been exploring this crucial mineral in India as well. And surveys by Atomic Minerals Directorate for Exploration and Research, which is an arm of the Department of Atomic Energy, has shown the presence of 1600 tons of lithium resources in the igneous rocks of Marlagala Alapatna region of Karnataka's Mandya district. So this particular region can be very important for us from the preliminary examination point of view because lithium deposits have been found here. And this is a very crucial aspect for preliminary examination. Besides the survey finding the deposits of lithium in Marlagalla Alapatna, there are other potential areas where lithium can be found. And these include the brines of Sambhar and Pachpadra Lake in Rajasthan and also in the Rann of Kutch region in Gujarat. Also, mica belts and the pegmatite belts are being looked for the presence of lithium. And these mica belts are present in Rajasthan, Bihar, and Andhra Pradesh. And the pegmatite belts are found in Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and Karnataka. And these are the potential geological sites where lithium can be found in India. So, what is important for us from the preliminary examination point of view is that lithium abroad is mainly found in the lithium triangle, which is located in Latin America, in the Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. And in India, it has been explored in the Marlagalla Alapatna region of Karnataka's Mandya district. And the potential sites for lithium in India include the mica belts in Rajasthan, Bihar, and Andhra Pradesh, and the pegmatite belts in Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and Karnataka. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 10 is related to the discovery of another important mineral in India. And according to the Geological Survey of India, first ever primary deposits of vanadium have been reported from India. So, let us look at some important facts for us from the preliminary examination point of view regarding the discovery of vanadium in India. Where is it used presently, and also why is this discovery important? Now, vanadium is a high value metal which is used in strengthening steel and titanium. It is significant because India is not a primary producer of this strategic metal at present. However, India is a significant consumer of vanadium. Now, India consumed about 4% of 84,000 tons of vanadium that is produced across the globe in 2017. Besides India, China is also one of the largest consumer of this metal. Now, as India is not the primary producer of this strategic metal, it is recovered as a byproduct from the slag which is collected from the processing of vanadiferous magnetite ores. So accordingly, this new discovery of vanadium deposits in Arunachal Pradesh is very crucial for India because presently India is not a primary producer of this important mineral which is used in strengthening steel and titanium. So the concentrations of vanadium have been identified in Paleoproterozoic carbonaceous phyllite rocks in Depot and Tamang areas of Papam Parade district in Arunachal Pradesh. So basically they have been found in phyllite rocks and they have been found from the state of northeastern India, that is Arunachal Pradesh. Now this discovery is crucial because this is the first time India has reported primary deposits of vanadium. So these facts can be important for us from the preliminary examination point of view. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 7 basically talks about the dilemma that is present in front of the Reserve Bank of India in pursuance of its monetary policy. Now, we note that India has been facing demand as well as supply shocks, and they have been caused mainly because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and this has led to contraction in the India's GDP. So as you might all be knowing that India's GDP growth rate in the first quarter of the financial year 2020 and 21 was minus 24%, which means that Indian economy has seen a contraction. So when the growth rate is low, the Reserve Bank of India normally adopts an expansionary monetary policy. And accordingly, the RBI had adopted this expansionary monetary policy. And how does it do so? So it does so by reducing the policy rates, that is the repo rates and the reverse repo rates, etc. And this leads to increased money supply in the economy, and it kickstarts investment and consumption expenditure. So because of this supply of money or liquidity in the Indian economy, we have seen some sort of growth, and recently we note that in the data that was released, the GDP contraction will be about minus 7% only as compared to minus 24% earlier. So this shows that there have been some signs of recovery in the Indian economy because of the pumping of liquidity by the Reserve Bank of India. However, the article or the author highlights that there are certain amount of dilemmas in front of Reserve Bank of India in pursuance of its monetary policy. So let us look at what are the challenges that are currently being faced by the Reserve Bank of India in pursuing its monetary policy, and they can be important for us from General Studies paper 3 point of view in the topic economic development. Now the first dilemma that is there in front of the Reserve Bank of India is, should it target inflation or should it target economic growth? Now we note that in the monetary policy framework, the target that is there in front of Reserve Bank of India is that the inflation in India should be in the range of 4 plus minus 2%. And this inflation is calculated based on the consumer price index or the CPI. However, the present rate of inflation is well above this targeted range of 4 plus 2%, that is 6%, and presently it stands at about 6.9%. So this shows that inflation is high in Indian economy, and accordingly the Reserve Bank of India should target the inflation in the economy. So in order to bring the inflation under control, the Reserve Bank of India will be required or is required to increase the policy rates or the repo rates. And this is done in order to decrease the supply of money in the economy or discourage the liquidity. So if there will be lesser amount of liquidity in the system, it will reduce the inflation in the economy. But there is an issue with such kind of policy if the RBI pursues or targets inflation by increasing the policy repo rates. So if the RBI increases the policy repo rates, it would lead to increase in the rate of interest on the loans, and accordingly this will hamper the revival of Indian economy. So on the one hand, if RBI increases the policy rates for controlling inflation, it might adversely impact the economic growth. However, if RBI continues to maintain the lower rates of interest by reducing the repo rates, this would further increase the money supply in the long run, and accordingly inflation might again increase. So this is clearly a dilemma in front of Reserve Bank of India, that if it increases the policy rates, it might reduce inflation, but it will arrest the economic growth. However, if it reduces the policy rates, it will although increase the economic growth, but it will at the same time increase inflation as well. And for a sustainable economic growth, we all know that inflation should be reduced while economic growth should occur. So clearly this shows that Reserve Bank of India has a clear dilemma in terms of its pursuance of the monetary policy. The second dilemma that is there in front of the Reserve Bank of India is, should it go for financial stability or should it go for economic growth? Now we note that when the GDP contracts or there is lower growth rate in an economy, the Reserve Bank of India normally pursues an expansionary monetary policy, that is, it injects liquidity into the economic system. And this liquidity or money is injected into the system to revive the investment and the consumption expenditure. And accordingly, the RBI has injected huge amount of money to revive investment and consumption expenditure, because that will put more money in the hands of people, and accordingly that will be used for increasing investment and consumption expenditure. And that is one of the factors that lead to the economic growth. Now, although the RBI has injected high amount of money or high amount of liquidity into the system, because of the existing conditions in the Indian economy, that money is not being put into good use. And that is because poor investor and consumer investment due to economic slowdown has led to decrease in the credit creation. And that is mainly because banks are currently apprehensive in giving loans due to the fear of possible increase in the non-performing assets. And we note that the biggest challenge in front of the Indian banking system presently is the increasing number of non-performing assets for these banks. And instead of giving the loans to the people and the companies, the banks are parking their surplus liquidity with the Reserve Bank of India itself under the reverse repo rate system. Further, whatever surplus liquidity gets into the hand of the investors, they might invest in poorly rated companies because already the economy is facing economic slowdown. And if the liquidity in the economy continues to be higher, it might have an adverse impact on the financial stability. So in the first place, banks are apprehensive in giving loans, and in case whatever surplus liquidity gets into the hands of investors, it might prompt them to invest in poorly rated companies. And such investments can be seen in investment in poorly rated corporate bonds or shares, which in long run could threaten the financial stability of the system. And if the liquidity in the economy continues to grow and investors keep on investing in poorly rated companies, it might have an adverse impact on the financial stability of the economic system. But on the other hand, if the RBI starts to decrease the liquidity or sucks out excess liquidity from the economy, it could lead to increase in the rate of interest on the loans and can hamper the economic revival. So again, we see that there is clearly dilemma in front of Reserve Bank of India as to what kind of policy should it pursue. So should it go for economic growth or should it go for financial stability? And both have their adverse sides or cons, as we can see in this explanation that is given here by the author. The third dilemma that is there in front of Reserve Bank of India is related to the exchange rate management and controlling the inflation. Now we all know that there are ultra low interest rates that are going on in the developed economies, and which has led to surge in the foreign inflows in the form of foreign portfolio investments and foreign direct investment into India. And that is because these investors find that because of higher rate of interest in India, they will be getting more amount of returns on their investments. Now what is this doing is that it is leading to large scale appreciation in the Indian rupee, because the foreign investors are chasing Indian rupee. And if there is appreciation in the Indian rupee, this adversely impacts the export competitiveness of the India or the Indian products. So now what should RBI do in such a scenario? So the RBI has been intervening in the forex market to buy the dollars and check the large scale rupee appreciation and building up foreign exchange reserves. And this is done in order to arrest the appreciation of Indian rupee. However, the purchase of dollars is accompanied by equivalent injection of rupees into the Indian economy. And this leads to increased rupee supply in the economy. However, when there is increased money supply in the economy, we all know that it leads to increased inflation in the economy, which is also going to adversely impact the macroeconomic stability in the long run. So on the one hand, RBI needs to attract foreign inflows and maintain stable exchange rate. But on the other hand, if it does so, this could lead to increase in the rate of inflation. So this again clearly shows another dilemma that is there in front of Reserve Bank of India for pursuing its monetary policy. So we have seen that there are three dilemmas that are there in front of Reserve Bank of India according to the author. And they are inflation versus economic growth, financial stability versus economic growth, and exchange rate management versus controlling inflation. With this, we conclude this discussion, and these are the answers for the self-assessment test. And after this, let us take up the question for the day.